Welcome to the Doctor's Life podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Dianne. Think of the podcast as a mobile doctor's lounge where we take some time out and explore topics that doctors are interested in related to what it means to be a doctor in today's world and creating a rich, satisfying, and meaningful life, as well as making the healthcare system better for doctors and patients. So, if you are a doctor, you'll feel right at home, and if you aren't a doctor, you'll get a better understanding of doctors and what we think about and talk about. I know you will enjoy the conversation. Let's jump in. Hey everybody, it's Dr. Dianne Ansari-Winn again. Thank you so much for coming to the Doctor's Life podcast. Today I have a good friend and co-coach with me, Katrina Ubell. She's a pediatrician. Can I mention that she went to University of Michigan, which you can, if you're looking down, you can see my diploma in the background. Go Blue. She's a pediatrician and she's turned certified life and weight loss coach. And she helps busy women physicians permanently end their weight loss struggle through coaching and the latest weight loss research. She also hosts the podcast, Weight Loss for Busy Physicians. She lost 55 pounds herself, utilizing the tools she teaches, and now weighs less than she did in 9th grade. Dr. Katrina, awesome. So happy to see you today.
Thank you so much for having me on, Dianne. This is so fun. I'm so excited.
I know. You guys don't know, but we met a few months ago and we just have become like super close. So I'm super excited to have you.
Thank you so much. I think we have a lot of good conversation to have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we start off where we always do, which is if you wouldn't mind sharing your journey into medicine and how you came to be doing what you're doing now.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you just the truncated version. I am not someone who thought in kindergarten they wanted to be a doctor at all, right. But I always excelled in math and science and always really liked things that were related to anatomy, physiology, biology, and just science classes in general. So in high school, I thought I wanted to be an engineer and decided to do biomedical engineering. People always asked, are you going to be a doctor? Absolutely not. I don't want to be a doctor is what I said. And so then I went to college for biomedical engineering. And at the college I went to, you were strongly encouraged to do some research. And so the person that I was connected with was a physical therapist who did a lot of work with prosthetic limbs and orthotics and things like that. And so I would go and shadow him every week. And he said, hey, you know what I actually also do is I go to this orthopedic surgery clinic. I was like once a month or something at Johns Hopkins Hospital and work with the ortho doctors there. If you don't mind getting up super early, you can come and shadow this. And I was like, yeah, sweet. That sounds good. Okay, sure. I'll do that. So I did that a few times. And even though the early wake up was super painful because I had to take a bus over to get there, I just loved it. I really, 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 really loved it. And I thought, oh goodness, maybe I do want to be a doctor. And I was doing all the engineering stuff and it was fine is how I would describe it. It was just fine. Like it wasn't anything I super loved, but I could do it. There was nothing wrong with it. I just didn't love it. And I also couldn't really see myself long-term working as an engineer. Just when I looked at who was around me and it just didn't seem like something that I could really identify with. So then I thought, okay, well, I am getting this engineering degree. Maybe I should spend a summer actually working as an engineer before I say no to this. So that's what I did. I spent a summer working for the General Motors Proving Ground and actually did biomedical engineering. And it was interesting, but that pretty much sealed it for me. I was not interested in doing that. So that was after sophomore year that I decided, okay, I'm going to go to med school. And I also didn't want to do a 5th year. So I worked really hard and took a ridiculous number of credits my junior year to be able to have all the requirements required to apply to med school, thinking that I wanted to do orthopedic surgery. That was totally my interest. Then got into medical school, went to University of Michigan, was ortho all the way, and even did, and on my surgery rotation, did a month of ortho with the person that you needed to do the month with to get your recommendation and all of that stuff. And I just didn't like it.
Oh, wow.
And I just didn't like the surgery that much at all. I mean, again, it was like, it was fine, but to commit to that kind of training and lifestyle, I mean, no, that was not what I wanted to do. So then I had to decide what was I going to do. I kind of thought back to all the different times I interacted with children. And I remembered, well, that really was kind of fun. Maybe I should do my sub-Is in peds and see what I think. And I really did like it a lot. So then did my residency in Milwaukee with my husband. We had to jointly match here, and I ended up staying. Got a job, my husband got a job, and here we are. We actually really love it here. So then I worked in practice for 10 years, a private practice, very successful, built up my own panel, and everything from the outside really looked great. There was nothing to complain about, nothing to scoff at. I mean, you really, from the outside would be like, this is a great job. You'd be crazy to leave. But what ended up happening over the course of time was that my family changed, and we had 3 children, and my husband's practice got more established, and my children got more involved in different activities, and I was just really struggling, which we probably will delve into later, the details of that, but really kind of struggling. And I didn't really even know it. I was sort of in denial, I think, about how much I was actually struggling. And then ultimately, after 10 years, kind of had this big, what I call my come to Jesus moment, my kind of big moment of like, wait a minute, I don't actually have to do this. And if that's the case, then what am I going to do? And so I'd previously been exposed to a little bit of life coaching and thought it was so interesting, immediately wanted to know more, didn't see though how it was going to fit into my busy life. Right. And so I thought, wait, this might be my opportunity to do that. And that's exactly what I did. So I, like you said, I took those concepts, applied it to weight loss, lost a bunch of weight, and thought, you know what, I really would have loved to have someone like me back when I was in practice. Maybe I could be that person for people who are like I was back then and help them in the way that help didn't seem available to me at the time.
Wow.
That's what I do now.
Yeah. So how long ago was it that you left clinical medicine? Did you start coaching and then leave, or like
No, I didn't.
Or how'd that go?
No, I ended up leaving at the very end of 2015, and then I did my coach training at the beginning of 2016. And then got going from there.
Yeah. And I will say that you've had a very successful life coaching practice to date. So she jumped into it with both feet and has really been successful at it. So it can be done.
It definitely can be done.
Yeah. Yeah. You were saying that, our discussion today is going to be about clinical medicine, whether or not to stay or go in clinical medicine, or leaving medicine versus going part-time, or deciding to stay. Because both of us have pretty strong opinions about it, because we both have left clinical medicine. We both do non-clinical careers now, and we both have our coaches and have the benefit of hindsight. So we thought we would be able to talk together today and help some of you guys that are out there kind of thinking about whether or not to leave medicine, talk about what's on the other side of it and our journeys into deciding to leave medicine. So how did you come to make that choice? Was it, you're saying before that, you kind of didn't exactly realize that. Was it some sort of epiphany? Did you have discussions with others, or
basically what had happened was, without, I'll conceal, the innocent here, in terms of details, but basically, I was hired into a practice and never fully felt accepted. I was the first woman physician that had ever been hired in the practice's 40-year history. They had to pretty much hire a woman because in pediatrics, it was really just the trend. People were leaving the practice because they did not have a female physician. And I don't really know what was going on their part. All I can say is, for me, I was excited. I was gung-ho. I was ready to be a part of not only really providing great care, but being involved in the course of the practice as well, and kind of the development of the practice as a whole, and somewhat the business element. And over the course of years, it became, impressed upon me that I was not welcome to be involved in that. And that was fine. And I, basically, now I know, kind of coach myself through it. But what I now also in hindsight can look back and see where the issue partly was with that was that there was really a lack of growth. Because at first you're growing when you're fresh out of residency, leaps and bounds, right? Exponentially because of your knowledge and how you want to do things, and you try things and they don't work, and then you figure something else out. But then after a couple of years, maybe 4, 5, 6 years, you're like, I've pretty much got this dialed. Certainly not saying I know everything, but I can help a baby that's not sleeping sleep, right? Like I can help with all kinds of different issues. You've got ADHD stuff, like bring it, let's do this. I've got my plan. And generally it works, and we problem solve and we get the solutions that we need. And I sort of was getting to a point where I kind of felt like it's the same thing every day. It was a little Groundhog Day-ish, but you don't want to get too complacent because you don't want to miss some, kid with leukemia or something, right? Something weird. But it just was not something that was really feeding me very much.
Yes.
And I will say that it's not like I just sat there and took it and never asked for what I needed or expressed concern about how I was treated. I did. Apologies were made. Words were spoken. No, we don't think about you in that way. But that really was just not the nonverbal. It really just was not my experience of it. And I always say that I really could have used a coach back then to help me sort out my thinking, because I was not taking personal responsibility for my part in that. Not that I look back and think that I didn't show up in a way that I'm proud of, because it's not that at all. It's just that there was a lot of blame, going on. So where it really came to a head and where I really started thinking about the possibility of leaving was at a point after one of my colleagues. So I was the first female physician, then they hired another one a few years after me. And she had gone through something in her family where that ultimately ended up in a death in the family. And she found herself over a course of a few weeks needed to take some time off kind of unexpectedly with just, as things go when something like that's happening. And I had been offered many years prior more vacation time, and I had actually refused it, thinking that I didn't need it. But I knew that, obviously we're all aging. I knew my parents were aging, and my parents live a 7-hour drive away. And I knew I was also going to be the one who was going to be taking on their care if and when that was required. And so my parents were healthy, but I was thinking ahead, I really should. I had a contract up for renegotiation anyway. I thought I really should just bring this up and maybe take those couple weeks. Like I probably won't even take them as actual vacation, but I would like to have that as an opportunity, as a possibility, just if something happens, as those, quote unquote, something, right? Some things tend to happen suddenly. There's not like hey, in 4 months, something's going to happen. So make sure you block out this time so that you can head over there. Right. And I have 3 children. Like it's not easy for me to just up and leave.
Exactly.
So I thought long and hard about that, made the request, and to just skip over a lot of drama, the request was denied. And it very much felt once again like I was a cog in the wheel. I was a money-making proposition there, and that was the way my worth and value was seen. Not as we are humans who are all working together to provide excellent pediatric care. And if having the possibility of taking a few days off more to help with your work-life balance is something that would be good for you, let us consider it,
Right.
And so I was pretty furious about that. And to the point where I was having a hard time sleeping. And this is kind of when the heart, that come to Jesus moment kind of happened. I am a good sleeper in general, and I was up. It was literally 2 a.m, couldn't sleep. I was so just furious, just enraged, and my brain couldn't settle down. And my husband is snoring next to me, and I just couldn't sleep because I was so upset. And so I kind of now I know, I kind of coached myself. I had got into this solutions focused place and really just thought, okay, so what are all of my options here? If you're going to be this mad, actually do something about it. Don't just sit here and, complain and complain and complain. Actually, let's move forward with this. And so I thought, I could work at this hospital system, or I could work at that hospital system. I could work urgent care. And none of those things sounded very attractive to me at all. But I was like, well, it is an option though. It is an option. And then all of a sudden I just had this thought, or you could retire early. And it was literally almost a double take of myself. Wait, could I do that? Really? Wait, do people do that? And so I got to sleep that night telling myself, okay, I'll work another 10 years because 20 years is a respectable career, right? 20 years as a doctor, nobody's going to totally be like, what?
Right.
And so I got to sleep that night. The next morning I told my husband, hey, listen, this is what I think I want to do. And he was kind of like, okay, all right, that sounds fine. I mean, we'll still have kids in college, but we can plan accordingly for that. And that's fine. And the interesting thing though, was once I gave myself that option, like I always say, it's kind of like opening the door, just a teeny crack.
Yeah.
Like once I could see through, it literally in 2 weeks went from 10 years to 5 years to 2 years to 6 months. I was like, I got to get out of this place. I can't, I do not want to do this anymore. Right. And so I did not take it lightly. I didn't just like turn in my letter of resignation, which not that there's anything wrong with that, but I really knew that I could never undo this. This was really going to be a very permanent decision in the sense that I could go back to medicine, but I could never come back to this patient panel that I had created. Right. This collection of wonderful people who knew, I mean, I always, kind of joke, like I molded them exactly the way I like them, like you start when they're babies and these are the expectations and this is how we interact. And so they were really getting tremendous value and it was working for me. And, we just kind of self-selecting all of that. And I knew I could build up a practice again, but it wouldn't be the same. It would definitely be different. So I, spent a lot of time thinking about it, obviously talking to my husband about it. We met with our financial planner to make sure that this wasn't like the stupidest idea I'd ever had, that we were wrecking ourselves financially. And I do have to say that we did not have any more educational debt. Literally the only debt we had was our mortgage. And we were just not in a position where we needed my money at all, which a lot of people who are considering non-clinical medicine or leaving medicine are not in that situation. So I do just want to mention that the financial component was really not a factor. I mean, we did meet with a financial planner, but I was kind of going to just be like, well, I'm doing it anyway, regardless of but just kind of, liked getting his blessing, of course. And then I spoke to other important people in my life. I mean, I couldn't talk to just everybody about it because it was obviously such a, hot button topic, but I talked to my parents about it a lot, talked to some close friends about it. And really just decided, like, I think this is what I want to do. And the freedom I felt in just making that decision, like, okay, this is what I'm doing. I sat down to write the letter that was sent out to my patients. And I think it was 3 minutes it took me to write it. It was just like exactly straight from the heart. I've loved you all so much. It has been my absolute honor and pleasure to take care of your families. And my time here has come to an end. I'm going to do something else. And so, I mean, the hardest part of that then was working for another 6 months. And I gave them 6 months because we all live in the same community and have similar friends and connections. And I just didn't want to leave them high and dry. I felt like, okay, in 6 months, if they, that gives them ample opportunity to replace me. And it also ended up being the end of the calendar year, which was good, just kind of from a fiscal perspective, and it gave me time to kind of cycle through a bunch of my patients and say goodbye. Yeah. And then that could be the end of it.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I think your story is really interesting. I love how it's come to a satisfactory ending. And I talked to docs that are thinking about leaving medicine and they sound really confused. And of course, like we're looking at things in hindsight. So in hindsight, would you have made the same choice or what would you have needed to stay in clinical medicine, if anything?
Yeah. I really, really wonder, I've often pondered this, if I had really gotten good coaching, it really, and not just like, a couple one-off sessions, but like really in-depth long-term coaching, would I have left medicine as a whole? I don't think that I would have stayed in my practice. I think I would have come to that conclusion of like, this is actually not the right kind of setup for me. Right. So I do think I probably would have ended up leaving that, but I mean, it's easy for me to be like, of course I would have left because I have a husband who makes plenty of money and I now have a business that's very successful. So it's like very easy for me to say that. So I don't want to make it sound like absolutely, it was the most amazing thing ever. But I do just want to say that I think that I definitely could have changed my thinking a lot to be able to enjoy medicine more long-term. And this was the thing, even when I said, okay, I'm going to leave, it's not like I hated it. And I would not really describe myself as being burned out. It wasn't that either. I mean, I could do it. It was fine. It just I felt stagnant. Like nothing was changing. Everything was going to be the same. The meaning I assigned to being told I couldn't have more vacation was, this is never going to
change.
I kept hoping that something would happen and somehow it would get better. And that was like the nail in the coffin on that thought, right? On that idea. Like, it's going to be like this. So you either need to accept it till you're 65 or let's just do something else. And so I also think that I didn't realize how many options there are for someone in clinical practice. I had a lot of beliefs that somebody could have challenged me on, like, well, I could do that, but I would never want to because of XYZ. Well, a lot of that was kind of made up in my head, like, oh, I could never run my own practice because it's way too difficult. But then you can do a small concierge, practice, and you can figure things out. And I just made a lot of assumptions that convinced me then that those were not good options for me. So I guess, I should just sum it up and say that I certainly don't look at it like, I wish I'd never done that. I wish I'd never gone into medicine. I mean, I really liked it. And I still think it's super fascinating. Like, I'm a doctor. It's not like I left and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad I never have to think about that again. Like, I find it still very, very interesting. And I really, really like providing value to the world and getting value out of that, right? Like feeling good about helping other people. And I've been able to translate that into another kind of career. Right. But I think for me, if I had gotten some job with maybe a life insurance company or something, or I don't know, doing something, like, could I have done that? Of course I could have, but I don't think that would have fed me as much as what I'm doing now. It's not like all about dollars and cents and getting the paycheck. For me, it's so much more about like, why am I here? What am I doing? Where am I going? I didn't even see any room for goal setting. I didn't really want to get involved in the hospital administration side of things. It was like, what else can I do? It didn't seem like there's anything else I could do. And that's what I found. And I could not have expressed this to you back then. It's what I see now. And the other thing I didn't mention is that I really do think that I chose the wrong field in medicine for me. It's not like I really regret it or anything, because I think, again, it's all brought me to where I am now. But I think that the setup of having to always be on, always be super chipper and supportive and never let anything stress you out or phase you outwardly, and help people with all of their bajillion questions, and then also stay on time, does not play into my strengths at all. And so this made practicing and doing really a good job, which I really prided myself in doing, very depleting. Like extremely draining for me. So as I got older and had more kids, I mean, I was just finding myself so empty at the end of the day. Like, there was nothing left for my family. And that really factored into my decision too, where I really just was like, this is not why I had children, so that I can come home and barely even get off the couch to give him a hug at night while my husband puts him to bed, because he still has energy, So that kind of plays into it too.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And I think that there's a lot of good reasons from what you've described. I feel the same way, that when I left, I burned out. So, as a lot of you guys know, so I burned out and left clinical medicine, because for me, the toll that the stress, the late nights, and, keeping people alive during surgery, and just feeling like I had to be so on top of everything and perfect all the time, that was taking too much of a toll on me, in addition to my physician husband and my 2 kids and all of that good stuff. I did have some coaching, and I actually talked to a psychiatrist too, because I wanted to talk to somebody that was not coming from a coach perspective. There weren't as many physician coaches as there are now. But I wanted to talk to somebody who had been through that grind, had been through medicine and really knew what it was about, so that I could feel like I was talking with someone who really had just theoretically gone through it, but had really gone through it. Sometimes when I was talking with coaches and I would tell them, that I'd worked a 24-hour shift or work 36-hour shift. When I was in training, we didn't have the residency requirements.
Yeah.
And so, I would come in the morning, and I did pediatric internship, come in the morning, work all night. You guys know, then see your patients and go
My
home
intern year was the last year before they had work hour restrictions. Yeah. And honestly, I think it was better.
Right. So it's the same thing. And so, when I would tell a coach that wasn't a physician a story like that, they would be like, oh my God, well, I don't even see how anybody does the work. And I'm like, that's not what I need to hear right now. Right. I need to hear, like, I get that. I cried in the hallway too. I cried on the, yes. Whatever your situation is. Like I said, I burned out. You had a different situation. But I think it speaks a lot to having coaching basically through your medical career. I talk with medical students. They're super happy to be able to talk through simple things such as how to make sure that you have that joy, excitement, and purpose even while you're starting out in medical school, because we're finding that, half of medical students feel burned out too. We have a culture of not taking care of ourselves. We have a culture of doing things that are hard, which is great because medicine is hard and there's no way around that. But how to maintain the capacity and the vitality, the energy, the purpose that we all felt, how do we maintain that throughout our medical careers and whatever we decide to do, whether we stay in medicine or like you and I, we've left clinical medicine, but we still want to serve, we still want to give to our physician communities. Yeah. So I think that coaching, and this isn't like a shameless plug, this is like a real thing, because what we accomplish in coaching is we help people work through their feelings and their thoughts and look over their options. So even as a medical student, like you said, you thought that you might have chosen the residency and your career path was different. It wasn't a good fit for your strengths. In hindsight, I kind of feel the same way too. Like I chose anesthesia because at that time I was an adrenaline junkie and I wanted to be a real doctor, like real stressful things and get up in the night
and stuff,
like gung ho and high fives and, trauma in the night and all of that. And that was a good fit for a while. Yeah. And then as you find that you change over time.
That's what I love about physician assistants, because they can just change. They can be like, look, now I've got a bunch of kids. I want to do something else. And they can do that.
And we go and switch.
Yeah, in theory, right? If you want to do another residency again. Yes. But we're kind of stuck.
Yeah. I had kind of looked at that too, where I was thinking, I'll go, do residency in family practice or psych. I'd always been interested in psych. Not big surprise. I like to coach now, but I looked at various options and none of them really fit that well. So it's important to at least know what your strengths are up front. As you said, it's, we morph and change and grow. And, so I won't say that being an anesthesiologist was a mistake, because at the time it was a great fit. But at the same time, you're 26, 28 years old, and all you know of what you want to do, if you haven't done any introspection or haven't done any work on yourself really, or had somebody specifically to help you like with your strengths that would be related to your career, what you know is what you see. So when you do pediatrics or when you do anesthesia, when you do surgery, you just know what you see on those rotations. And it's sort of like, well, it interests me and there's sort of a gut feeling for it. But our strengths, we can develop over time, but we do have a certain set of strengths that are like our core strengths. Like we have our innate strengths and then we have things that we develop. And as physicians, we're super smart. We are flexible. We are hardworking, resilient. And so it's not surprising that we can choose pretty much anything that we want to do. And we adapt to it and that's fine. But wouldn't it have been cool, like if we had back in the day, like been able to work with somebody and said, these are what your strengths are. And probably the reason why you like this is because it does, part of this does appeal to your strengths, and some of it doesn't. Maybe this would be a better fit. Maybe that would be a better fit. Yeah. So that our choices as careers, because our whole mission in having this conversation isn't to be like, hoorah, like doctors all leave. Like, we don't want doctors to leave.
Exactly. We made that clear. Like, no, we can't have everybody leaving.
Yeah.
We're going to take care of all of us.
Right. We're here to talk about like the choices around leaving medicine, the decision-making around leaving medicine. And so, what we're saying here is that it'd be good to start thinking about that in terms of what's in alignment with you, what your strengths are, what you like, and what you think your life might want to look like, and start that early so that, 10 years out for you, 15 years out for me, we're not trying to self-coach or talk to a coach. Like myself, I work with docs that are struggling in their career decision-making. Start early. And, really know yourself better.
And even once you know yourself, say you're further along, right? You're like, well, that ship has sailed. I'm a number of decades into this now. Now what do I do?
Right.
Really, I wish I had believed that I could craft the practice that I wanted. Mm-hmm. Like, I literally didn't believe that you could just create a job that is your ideal job. Mm-hmm. I really looked at it like, what jobs are available and would I want to do any of them? And that's the wrong way to look at it. You can create whatever you want. You have to ask for what you want. You have to be very thoughtful in crafting what it is that you want to create. And then you go and you sell it, right? Mm-hmm. You go to the different systems, or you say, this is my dream, or this is what I want to do. Of course, it's helpful if you can get paid for it too, right? So you can't spend 3 hours with every patient typically, unless you get some grant funding or something like that. But you know what I'm saying? It's like the idea of just, okay, this is what I chose. These are my strengths. Right now, they don't fit together at all, but how might they fit together? Let's just dream here. Let's just go to imaginary land. What could possibly work for me? How can we make that feasible here? I mean, I think honestly, something that would have been potentially pretty good for me would have been just a simple job share with somebody else. And the other woman physician at my practice probably would have been interested in doing that, but she wasn't. I knew she wasn't going to be in a position financially to be able to do it for a number of years, and I didn't want to wait that long.
Right.
I just knew. I was like, well, I'm not going to sit around and like hang my whole life on what she decides. Like, I want to be more proactive. But, and I don't think that practice was the right place to do that, but I could have created something like that. And I think that's so important to have that future focused mind and that solutions focused mind of what are all the options. And hiring a coach can help you to do that. So again, this is not a sales podcast on you should hire a coach, although you should, because everybody needs a coach. But really the idea of having somebody who's completely neutral, who's not giving you advice, who's not telling you what to do, whose sole job is to help you figure out what you want to do.
Exactly.
Help you sort out all the nonsense in your brain and figure out what's really important to you and what the real issues are deep down, so that you can start moving forward. And then what I love about coaching is we're taking highly successful, highly functioning people in this world and helping them to live a better life. This isn't the same as the mental health world, where we're taking people who are having a very hard time functioning normally and getting them to normally functioning, right? So it's some people I think are kind of like, well, isn't that like therapy? And it really isn't. I mean, at least the kind of coaching that I do, we don't spend a lot of time in the past. It really doesn't matter. What I care about is what you think about your past right now. What are your thoughts right now? Like, we get really present. We don't need to hash out what happened with your mom when you were 3. Like now, if you have experienced some trauma and you haven't really worked through it, then going through that with a counselor, with some like therapist or somebody, can be extremely helpful. And then you're ready for coaching. Now it's like, okay, what are we going to create moving forward? Let's figure out the solution to this. So I definitely would suggest for any physician who's really just at a point of such dissatisfaction that they're considering leaving the whole field altogether, to really think about, what are my other options? I put all this effort into this. Is there a way to salvage this still? And, investing in some coaching is investing in yourself. We spend money on very dumb things all the time to try to make us feel better. Well, if you take that money and invest that in a coach who helps you to actually just create what you want, then you don't need to be looking for other things. And that's where my coaching focus comes in. Why are these doctors overweight? Because they are emotionally eating to feel better. Right. So sure, we get them to lose weight. And then I teach them tools to help them to not need to overeat to deal with their life, So exactly. It's like, how can we change your life so that food can really just be fuel for your body like it was intended to be, and just drop all the nonsense and the brain chatter and the negotiations about food, and which is just a total distraction from what the real problem is, and actually just help you create the life that you want. And it's just so amazing. I'm sure you've had the same results where people finish working with you and they're like, I can't even imagine not doing this. Like, this is literally a line in the sand in my life. Mm-hmm. Like the before I did this and the after I did this. You can't unknow this kind of information once you really see it play out, right? And then it's just like, and I had first been exposed to coaching in 2014 and I loved it. I immediately wanted to do more and learn more and wanted to become a coach. I just didn't see how it was going to really work with my life. Right. But once I, kind of thought, okay, well, now I'm not going to do clinical practice anymore. Well, hey, I always did want to do that life coaching thing. Mm-hmm. Maybe I should just look into that. Right. And, it's been a complete excellent fit for me in terms of what I love to do, which has been lucky that I hit it so quickly. But I've also invested, I just want to say I've invested in a lot of coaching on myself. Mm-hmm. So I have made it back in spades. It's been the best investment in myself and my business, but it's not like I was like, oh, I learned some tools. Okay, let me hang out a shingle. Here we go. I had to do my own work first. And that's why I think hiring a coach is so important, especially if you think you want to become one. You are your best first client. Yes. So spending time and investing in yourself in that way is something that you can, whether you become a coach or not, or you leave medicine or not, you'll never regret that.
Yeah, I agree. It's when I first came to doing the coaching working with a coach, I should say, before I left medicine, that was exactly what I thought too. Like, what do I want to do? Oh yeah, I want to be like you. I want to become a coach. And so I started doing coach training and I became a certified professional coactive coach, which takes like over a year to do, as well as a certified physician development coach. And I will say, the coach training itself is, it's such a developmental tool. You learn so much about yourself and the way to think, how your feelings affect what's going on. And I would say too that for talking with a coach that has been a physician is really helpful as well, especially if you're deciding whether or not to leave medicine or stay in medicine. And I
think we just, sorry to interrupt for a second, but I think that we as doctors always think that people who aren't doctors just don't really get it.
Yeah. Right, because they don't. Because
they really don't. But I do think that really is so helpful, right? Like you want to leave medicine and then you're giving someone's like, well, you could just whatever and do this thing. It's like, no, it's like when I hired a nutritionist and she's like, well, you just have to take a break in the middle of clinic to eat a small meal. And I was like, never going to happen. Right. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but no, could I guess, but I'm not going to do that. And so I think that's what gives us that real credibility. Mm-hmm. Like we really do understand, but we also can challenge where the challenge needs to happen, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
We're not just going to feed in and agree with everything you say.
Right. Because we're looking at too, where we can help you get where you want to go, but also because we're neutral and we have a good understanding of what it takes, we're not going to be like, oh, you need a financial plan. That you need to have your spouse on board, or at least, talk with them and work things through. There's a lot of things to consider. I did another podcast called Going to the Dark Side, where we talked about a lot of these things. And we're actually going to do, Katrina and I are going to do a part 2, which I hope that you tune into, about the other side, like when you've already left, and different non-clinical career paths in entrepreneurship that I know that you guys will find really interesting. But going back, there's a lot of things to consider when you're thinking of leaving medicine. And one of them is there's two parts. One, like, should I stay or should I go? And then, but to answer that question, there's a lot of moving parts that you should at least consider. It's simple things like tail coverage, or, like there's, it's like thousands of dollars. So if you retire, then at least for me, like if you actually retire and say I'm not going to see patients anymore, then that's a different situation with your tail coverage than if you're going to stay in practice or work less. There's tons of options now. You don't have to just choose one way of doing it. I've talked to docs who do concierge medicine. I've talked to entrepreneur docs. I've talked to docs who go into pharma. There's myself. I work in industry. So there's tons of options. There's things, and you can even try on things too as you're just deciding whether or not to leave. Just as you were saying, when you kind of tried on engineering, there's ways that you can, and we'll talk about this in this next episode, ways that you can try on new things, new careers before you make that big leap. Because I will say, it's been your case, Katrina, and mine, that, and we know as coaches too, that once you make a decision, things are going to fill in to support that decision. Mm-hmm. So if you decide to leave clinical medicine, most people do not go back. They can, but they usually don't, because the universe and your world and your viewpoint and the people around you, your finances, everything will fit in around that decision. The same as if you stay. If you stay, everything's going to, and you've already worked out all the details and you've worked out why you want to stay. You've got your purpose back, your joy, your vitality, etc. Everything's going to work around staying. So it's good to, we don't want to put like so much on people where they're like feel overwhelmed, but at the same time, there are a lot of things to consider. And so
you got to be smart about it. You really do have to be smart about it, because, and the great thing is doctors are smart. So that's not a problem, right? But what you don't want to be doing is making a decision that's super emotional and based on just trying to escape this negativity, this perceived negativity. First, what you have to do is recognize, oh, I'm actually the one creating the negativity. So how about I clean that up first?
Yes.
And then from that place, make the decision about what I really want to do.
Exactly.
Not making a grass is greener kind of a thing. I feel, and we're going to talk about this in the next episode, so maybe we should.
No, it's good. We're switching a little bit, but
right. But it really is kind of this idea. I feel like sometimes people look at what I've done and created and they're like, oh, that's amazing. I totally would love to do that. And I'm like, yeah, but like, you're only seeing the really like shiny good parts, like you don't see me when it's hard, when it's really hard, and that's what we want to touch on.
Right. Exactly. And so having somebody that's neutral and that can help you look at the things that are hard and work through them. That's what coaches love to do. That's what gets us excited. So we are going to end this segment. We're going to segue into another segment. So I hope you guys all tune in and listen to that part 2. In the meantime, we've been listening to, of course, Dr. Dianne Ansari-Winn and Dr. Katrina Ubell. We're both coaches that coach physicians, and we've been talking about making choices and leading clinical medicine on the Doctor's Life podcast. So we're going to end this episode for now. Until next time, I hope everybody stays happy and healthy, and we're looking forward to your coming to our next episode, where we talk about the other side, non-clinical career paths and entrepreneurship, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening today. If you like what you've heard, be sure to hit subscribe in your podcast app so that you won't miss an episode. You can also read show notes, get links, and contact me by going to drdianne.com. That's www.drdianne.com. And docs, while you're there, take the Physician Vitality Assessment, which will help you more clearly see if you are at risk for burnout. Hi, it's Dr. Dianne here. Are you a doc that's interested in or required to help other doctors around stress, burnout, and physician wellness? Perhaps you're a physician leader who is in a position where you need to be able to know how to counsel other doctors, a medical school or residency program director, or just a doc who wants to make a difference and advance healthcare by helping other docs to be healthy in mind, body, and spirit. Well, you're in luck because the Physician Coaching Academy is now enrolling. It's an online-based training program where you will learn together with other doctors how to become a coach for doctors like me. Want to learn more? Go to www.talkwithdradianne.com. That's www.talkwithdradianne.com.